I want to talk about solar flares today. And at the time of recording this, it is Valentine's Day 2026, February 14th. And I brought this up with my wife yesterday because for the past 10 days or so, week and a half, I have had something abruptly come up in my life, and it's something that's happened before. And I'm starting to notice this as a pattern. And let me know if you also experience this too, as a fellow sensitive empath psychic medium. Speaking of, if you're new to this channel, I'm Sky. I am a natural born psychic medium, and this is a place where I channel the collective and give you spiritual insights on all sorts of media. So, solar flares. I have noticed that I have insomnia, something really, really bad that just sprung upon me. And I have been really struggling with it. The other times that I felt this, I want to say in 2023, in 2020, I think those might have been big years for solar activity, sun flares, etc. Don't quote me on that, but I'm just picking that up intuitively right now as I go off the cuff. But this is something that we should be talking about because it affects us at a biological level. It affects us in a very real, tangible way. It's not just this woo-woo kind of thing. You can measure it. And not everybody is going to be able to pick up on the nuances of it. But if you're anything like me, I have not felt this one in a subtle way at all. In fact, it happened pretty much on a single day. And I don't know if I can go back and tell you specifically what day that was, but intuitively, I feel like it's about 10 days ago. So what would that be? February 4th, first week of February. So it started off with me not being able to sleep for hours and hours and hours, far beyond what I had as a typical schedule before that. So I couldn't get to bed at 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And then each day after that, for like the past 5 days or so, it's been getting worse and worse and worse, meaning it's pushing out further and further and further. And just last night, I wasn't able to sleep at all. I'm recording this at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I felt tired briefly at around 10:30, 11 p.m. And I even voiced this to my wife. I said, I should probably go to bed right now. I felt that yesterday and the day before. The other days I didn't feel that before, but I have been now. And I think the reason this is coming up as a topic for me to open up a discussion, just to give a voice to, is we've got so much distraction, if you want to see it that way, so much revelation, so much information, just a sea of information that is compounding every day, every month, every year, and it seems like it's swallowing us up whole. As I lay awake in bed last night, I actually had a video come to my feed, the first ever video that kind of is in the same realm of what I want to be doing more of on this channel. And that's a psychic medium, a fellow psychic like me, but giving a spiritual angle on a very real world topic. And her thing is relating it to what's politically going on. I am more about a wide variety of topics and interests, things that a lot of different people from different walks of life might stumble upon. If you were to look at my YouTube feed for the past like 10, 15 years, you'd think, is this one person? Is this a crazy person? This person is really looking at food vlogging information, or is really looking at food channels and travel channels and polyglot channels that give you like a really interesting impression, and then spiritual content and health related content. And there's a guy that I follow who's a sports trainer, and I'm not into sports, but I find his content really compelling. And I want to try and bridge the gap with all of this information, not just information, but all of this expression. I think especially this year in 2026, it's going to be ever more important, because now that YouTube has changed a lot of its guidelines for what it verifies authentic content. I suppose I don't really need to be putting the bunny ears up for that, because it's aimed at sort of combating the AI slop and just the sheer volume of mass-produced content, trying to combat it anyway. People are still going to find ways to use it. But that's been a big frustration of mine for the past 3 years or so. I've really procrastinated making content, especially with giving a spiritual angle at things and kind of reacting to things, giving my 2 cents, and reading for the masses, reading for the collective, as a pivot from what I had been focused on entirely for the past 7-8 years with private clients, where we sit down and then we dive deep into pretty much any aspect of their lives, your career, your love, your family, your spiritual path, the specific struggles that you go through. The world shows us patterns, and certain people who are receptive to those patterns or those themes that are being presented to you as information, as signs, are going to resonate with a lot of the messages that I'm going to bring up. And so, solar flares, don't ignore it. Next time you feel like you just can't sleep and it comes out of nowhere, like it does for me, like it does for you, take note of that. Look at your calendar. Go research on YouTube, Google, go to your favorite creator, go to your next door neighbor, ask them, is there solar activity going on? I had no idea. I just felt it. And I had an itch to look. And I looked today, and sure enough, the past, like almost exactly on the dime of what I said, right? 10 days. I think it happened. It started like February 4th, right? Is that what that said? I think it said February 4th. A series of what they say are X-class solar events. And I've always noticed that I am sensitive around electronic equipment. So if there's magnetic, electronic activity, especially from the sun, that's our biggest source of energy in our solar system and for the Earth, the planet, I'm going to pick up on that. And I'm sure everybody does to a certain extent, right? You might be thinking of that as a thought in your head as I say that, but that, don't use that as an excuse to, put yourself away on a shelf, so to speak. If you feel it, it means it's important for you to recognize that and to sort of see the significance of that. Why do you pick up on that? Why do you notice that and other people don't? Even if we all feel it and are all affected by it, why are you picking it up? And why is this message resonating with you? So sometimes we just got to dive deeper. And sometimes messages come to us in ways we don't expect. For example, if you're looking for a spiritual sign or a spiritual answer, or maybe even a point in the right direction of how you could emotionally heal a block or a pattern or a pain, a trauma. You might be given, or you might realize a sign in your physical environment that acts as a catalyst for you to take a step in that direction, maybe not directly, but maybe it's one step along a series of steps that'll have you eventually end up at some place that you had been asking for. So consider that. That might be an abstract message, but I think that those of you who are going to receive that and resonate with that are going to have a sense of what that's about. You might gain a little bit of clarity from that in my affirmation to you as the wind picks up here. My wife's behind the camera. Do you have anything to add? Any thoughts or impressions? She's been fine sleeping. She hits the pillow and she's out in like 10 minutes, and I don't have that luxury these days. I used to sleep like that as a kid. When I was young, my mom always told me I could sleep through a thunderstorm, or I could sleep through her vacuuming in the same room as where I was sleeping in my crib, and wouldn't affect me. There'd be an air horn right in my face and I wouldn't wake up. But these days, any small disturbance or sound or noise can bring me out of my sleep. I have a feeling it has a lot to do with electromagnetic activity, but I asked you earlier sort of like a redundant question or a rhetorical question. It's like, am I picking up on the collective disturbance from everything that's been being disclosed regarding the E-files? We'll call them the E-files, since this platform, YouTube, is a censorship hub and has been since 2015, 2016. And back then I was called a conspiracy theorist. I'm sure many of you were too, but it's interesting how the turns table, isn't it? Because now we almost need a new word for conspiracy theory, because we're running out of things that are not true or are actually crazy and don't have any sort of semblance of reality, because a lot of the things that we never thought could ever be real are, and they're being illuminated to a lot of people that haven't been preparing for this. So here's another message coming through for all of you. Be gentle, even though you have every reason in the world not to be, towards these people who have ridiculed you and shamed you and gaslit you and defamed you over your authentic, true voice and pure intention to bring truth to light. Where they saw ulterior motives, you knew was a pure intention. Just know that even though you were an early seer, you were a canary in a coal mine, doesn't mean you're necessarily better than anybody. It doesn't mean that they don't have their time and place and space to go through the processes that we've all been through. So be kind, be gentle, be compassionate and understanding. That does not mean get sucked in to the mayhem, and especially many have said people doubling down on their convictions of ignorance. That's their desire to cope with what should be uncopable. You should never tolerate what is intolerable. That's been a mantra for me and many of my clients for the past couple of years. Hold it true to yourself, but don't necessarily let it bleed into vindictiveness towards the people that have been totally dead ears on our strife for illuminating truth as something that we all should share. So keep that in mind. All right? Till next time.
If this speaks to you, this is your sign, right here and now. Please share with us your life, your circumstances, your story down below. I'm here to help us distinguish between what is true and what is false for all things spiritual and healing related. For personal sessions and healing programs, please visit skychen.com.